The Jets will not be practicing together for another 40 days. Let's do a little 53-man roster projection. And well, welcome back to New York Sports WickerMedia. I'm K99. Thank you, as always, for taking the time to watch these videos. Real quick, let's get some plugs out of the way. If you're brand new, please, welcome aboard. Please like and subscribe. You can check me out Wednesday night at Jets Chaos with Jeremy. We do our Wednesday night shows, 10 p.m. Thursday night, check me out with Green Bean. I deliver the trivia. So, OTAs have concluded. The Jets will not be reconvening for another 6 weeks almost until training camp begins. They get off to an early start with training camp since they got to play the Hall of Fame game against the Cleveland Browns in early August. So, I haven't done a Jets video in a little while. I figured I'd come on here and do a little 53-man roster projection after the conclusion of OTAs. And figure out, let's figure out what players might be able to jump their way into the 53, what players might be on the outside looking in at this point. So let's start with offense first. Now, as far as quarterbacks go, I'm only going to add two, Aaron Rodgers and Zachwilson for right now. Only going with two. I know a lot of people would want to go with three, but, Tim Boyle and Chris Streveler, I feel like the Jets can safely put them over to the side. If one of them gets claimed, fantastic, good for them. But I'm just going to roll with Rodgers and Wilson on the 53-man roster. So two quarterbacks. At running backs, I've got four. I've got Brycehall. I think he is going to start the season with the Jets. I don't think he's going to be going on the PUP list. But I'm going to go with Brycehall, Michael Carter, Bam Knight, and Israel Abanikanda. The decision that hurt me a little bit here is to give up Nick Bawden. I really like having a good fullback. I've been a fan of his ability to play. I think he's going to be the real victim of a numbers game, and when we get to the tight ends, you'll kind of see why. So I'm leaving Bawden off the 53 for right now, and I'm taking four running backs. Now, wide receiver, I'm going to take six. I don't think and I'm going to give you a little bit of a curveball on this one. I'm going to keep, obviously, Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, Corey Davis, as long as he's still here. McCole Hardeman, Randall Cobb, both brought in from outside the organization. They're going to be here as well. But for a sixth wide receiver, I'm not going to go with denzelmims. I'm not going to do that. There are a lot of wide receivers the Jets have brought in. Irving Charles last year. You've got Jason Brownlee. You've got Xavier Gibson. The Jets have a big array of wide receivers to select from. But I really like the raw ability of Jeromekapp. That is the player who I put in the thumbnail for this. He has been making plays all over the field in training camp, in rookie minicamp, in OTAs. He has shown ability. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that he unseats denzelmims on this roster. I think denzelmims moves on, whether it's a trade or whether I hope it's not a release, but I think Mims is not going to start the season with the Jets. So that's my big prediction on offense. Jeromekapp makes the Jets. Now at tight end, I'm going to go with four here. I'm Ty Conklin, CJ Uzomah, hopefully his leg is okay. Jeremy Ruckert, who I think is going to almost step in that H-back role, because he's such a good blocker. I think he's going to sort of nullify the need for a fullback. And with my fourth tight end, I'm actually keeping Kennyyeboah. Now, here's why I'm doing this. I'm leaving Zach Kuntz off. I think right now he's still a little bit too raw. And I still believe, as great an athlete as he is, you could sneak him through and put him on the practice squad. But you got to remember, with special teams, that last spot is almost always reserved for special teams. And outside of Yeboah, the Jets do not have a single wide receiver or tight end who plays special teams, and that does mean something. So I think that Yeboah is going to make the roster as the fourth tight end, and hopefully the Jets could sneak Kuntz away on the practice squad. So that's another kind of crazy prediction I have. Now let's go on to offensive line. Now I am actually going to keep 10 offensive linemen on this roster. I'm going to keep as my tackles Dwayne Brown, Mekhi Becton, Billy Turner, Max Mitchell, and the rookie Carter Warren. The Jets have really, really good depth at offensive tackle, but if Brown and Becton are both healthy, and these young players in Warren and Mitchell can spend the year and not be needed necessarily to start right away, all the better. I think Billy Turner is that first swing tackle who comes off the bench in the event of an injury. So I think the Jets are going to keep 5 tackles, which will allow them to keep Elijah Vera Tucker at guard and not have to move him out to tackle. And speaking of AVT, I've got him, of course, on the roster along with Laken Tomlinson and Wesschweitzer. Now, I'm keeping Schweitzer and I'm letting Tristan Colon go. And I think one of the reasons the Jets brought Colon in was they had a really good ability to play center. But now that the Jets have 2 centers on their roster, there isn't as big of a need to keep Colon, who's a little bit more inclined to be a center. You know, somebody has to be let go in this spot, and I think Schweitzer stays and Colon goes. And then at center, you have Joe Tippmann and you have Connor McGovern. No surprises there, okay? So that's what I'm looking at with the offensive line. So I've actually got 26 offensive players in this spot. Okay, now let's go to the defense. With the defensive line, let's just do this all together. There is no way in my mind the Jets are not keeping 10 defensive linemen. We know they love to do the rotation. They want to send everybody in waves, and the Jets have so many good pass rushers. It's a great problem to have that there's just players here you cannot let go of. So let's think about it. Just at defensive end alone, you've got Carl Lawson, John Franklin Myers, Jermaine Johnson, Bryce Huff, the rookie Will McDonald. Michael Clemens is now being used in more of a hybrid role with defensive end, and they want to use him at defensive tackle a little bit more. He's been putting some muscle on during this offseason. And then as far as pure defensive tackles go, you've got, of course, Quinnen Williams. Then you've got Quinton Jefferson, Al Woods, and Solomon Thomas. I don't see any real surprises here with the cuts. I mean, Tanzel Smart, Isaiah Mack, you know, there just isn't, there really isn't space for those players at this point. So those are my 10 defensive linemen. I think that's a pretty by-the-book roster spot. Linebacker, I'm keeping 4. C.J. Mosley, Quincy Williams, those are pretty obvious. I'm going to keep Jamiensherwood. I really like Sherwood. I think he's ready to take a step up this year. If Mosley gets hurt or if his game goes to hell, you have Sherwood to step into that spot. I think the Jets are going to keep Zaire Barnes, who was a rookie draft pick this year. And I think Hamza Nasruddin and Chaz Surratt are not going to make the 53. They'll stay on the practice squad if the Jets can swing it. But I think because the Jets have to focus their attention really on both the offensive line and the defensive line, you know, I'd like to see Quan Alexander come back. If he comes back, great. You know, but that might mean you have to sacrifice Barnes because, I mean, the Jets are not going to keep 5 linebackers. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be 4 at the very, very most in my mind. Mosley and Williams have their spots absolutely locked down. Sherwood should have a spot locked down. And then you can really go with Barnes, Nasruddin, or if you want to bring back Quan. And you know what? If they bring back Quan, then, you know, great. But you do need some speed at linebacker, and Barnes does provide that. So I like the idea of Barnes making the roster. Now with cornerback. Okay, so this one's going to be, I'm going to get a little bold on this one, not in terms of who makes it, but who doesn't make it. Now, of course, you have Sauce Gardner, you have DJ Reed, you have Justin Hardy playing special teams, you have Brandon Eccles as well, more on the outside corners, and in the slot, you have Michael Carter II and Jarek Bernard Converse. So JBC could play safety a little bit as well, but he's good at playing in the middle of the field. So that is all I'm keeping right now. I'm only keeping 6 corners. I think Bryce Hall, as much as he has struggled, I don't know if you could really justify keeping him on this roster. And it disappoints me. I like the kid. You know, we all want this guy to succeed. A lot of us, you know, he was looking like the best draft pick from Joe Douglas's first draft class, really. But, you know, last year things started to really go downhill for them, and they have not shown any sign of recovery. So I just don't think that you could really make a good case for keeping Bryce Hall, disappointing as that is. You know, the Jets did bring Javelin Guidry back. I think they're going to keep him around as long as Bernard Converse just in case Bernard Converse doesn't work out, they'll put Guidry there instead. But I think JBC makes this roster. So I'm only going with 6 cornerbacks on this team. Risky, yes, but that's what I'm going to go with. Really 5 cornerbacks in reality, because Justin Hardy never plays defense. He plays special teams. But I feel like that's what I have to do to keep some of these other players on. And as far as safety goes, yeah, this position still makes me go, not sold on it. Jordan Whitehead redid his contract. He'll be here. They acquired Chuck Clark in that trade from Baltimore. I like that a lot. You know the Jets love Tony Adams. You know, they let Jason Pinnock go last year just to keep Tony Adams because they believed in him. And with the last spot, I've been struggling with this one. You know, there's really 2 players. It could be Ashton Davis. It could be Treydean. Treydean was a safety that a lot of us were talking about leading up to the draft. He was not drafted. The Jets took him. I really think his play is going to make a huge difference here. With Ashton Davis, he's really more of a special teams player at this point. You know, his defense is very spotty. He's made a few big plays in his career, but really the Jets defensive staff doesn't really trust him to play a lot of defensive snaps. They used him maybe in late in games, like we all remember the interception he had to seal the victory against Cleveland. But, you know, as far as I remember, he did not play a lot of snaps last year. So, to me, if Treydean can play well enough, he's going to unseat Ashton Davis. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think there is one spot on that roster, and it's either for Ashton Davis or Treydean. And whoever wins it, wins it. I'm just going to get bold and say Treydean wins the spot. I'm just going to go there. I'm going to say Dean takes it. But I'm not saying that confidently, just for the record. And then in special teams, that's pretty much by the books. Greg Zuerlein, Thomas Morstead, and Thomas Hennessy as your kicker, punter, and long snapper, respectively. So that is my 53-man roster. Those are my thoughts. I want to see yours as well. Who do you think that should be on this roster that I've left off? You know, is there somebody who is on the roster who you don't think is going to make it? Put it down there in the comments. I'm curious to see what your opinions are. That's the fun of having different opinions. We can go back and forth and we can learn from one another. It's all good. So, who knows what's going to happen, if anything, in the next 5 to 6 weeks until training camp resumes. But until then, I'm Watsu-K99. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you right back here with more content from you know where. The Wicker Chair.